Good afternoon, Mr. Tarhesh. It is so good to sit down for this interview with you and allow our audiences to get to know you better.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you and with the audience. It's the first interview that I have with you after I joined the ECR group and the ECPM. It's a great honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to the questions that you have for me.
Yes. So let's just dive in and let's have you tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family, about who you are.
Yes, I'm originally from Romania. I immigrated to the United States in 2002 after I finished the seminary, the Greek Catholic Seminary in Oradea, Romania. I was living in the United States from 2002 to 2019, right after I was elected in the European Parliament. In the United States, I worked as a programmer and business intelligence director for a medical company. Besides that, I was ordained a priest, a Greek Catholic priest, and I had a church in the States. And also, I had an NGO that was very involved in supporting the fight against corruption, as well as the support for human rights and religious freedom, rights of property. In Romania, these were pretty much the three areas that I was focused on in the past almost 17 years before I was elected in the European Parliament.
It's great. Well, you've already hinted to it, but tell us, how did you become involved in politics? What was your motivation?
I would say that for many years I was not directly involved in politics. I was more telling the politicians what to do, because I was petitioning them. I was advocating for certain issues. I was meeting with them. I was persuading them to do certain things for the people and for the causes that I was fighting for. And when I had this chance, when I received this proposal to run for the European Parliament, I have to tell you that it shocked me, and because I was not prepared for something like this. I had a very good life in the United States, and out of the blue, you receive a call and someone tells you, look, we've seen what you've done over the years. We want to propose you to run on our list on an eligible position. You have like 48 hours to decide. And I said, initially, I thought that it's someone from like a candy phone when he's trying to make fun of you.
Right.
And I had to fly from California to Romania in just a few hours. I talked to the leaders, and the decision, I said, okay, I will accept the honor, I would say, to run on an eligible position for the European Parliament. And I had some conditions, I would say, and one of the conditions was to be allowed to speak freely and be open on certain issues that I would say are not as embraced and as politically correct here in Brussels. But we got an agreement and we moved on, and here I am after a year.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So then, speaking of that, how did faith inspire you? And then what would be the role of expressing faith in politics, or how would that?
I would say, even the way you phrase the question, I would, every time when I answer similar questions, I avoid saying that I'm a politician. I consider myself a public servant. And exactly as you serve your people from the altar or from the church, by preaching the word of God, or by ministering people in the hospitals, or in certain places, homeless or so. It is a way of serving your neighbors by being involved in politics. And you have a great opportunity by being elected in an official position, like in the European Parliament or in the national parliament, or as in the mayor's office, to actually apply the principles of the Bible, taking care of the people in need, trying to pursue the greater good, and trying to put others before you. Because at the end of the day, it is a sacrifice that you are making by being in a public position. And as I said, I was a priest, an active priest, to be precise. And when I received this proposal and I accepted the offer, I asked my bishop to relieve me of my priesthood duties. In other words, I currently don't have a church, because I said I don't want to involve the church in the campaign and in the politics and stuff. But as I said, I see this position as a way of serving your neighbors exactly as you serve them, by doing many other things. And
Right.
the faith, I would say, is the one that drives me to do the stuff that I believe in, even here in the European Parliament.
Yeah, we're very glad to hear that. Yeah. The Romanian party that you belong to, PNCCD, or the National Christian Democratic Peasants Party in Romania, it recently became a member of ECPM, of the European Christian Political Movement.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about the background of the party and how the values might align with ECPM?
The PNCCD, the National Christian Democratic Peasants Party, from Romania, it currently is the oldest party in Romania, and the roots of the party is from the two main regions of Romania, from Transylvania and from the south and Moldova. The national part of the party, because it has the national part and the peasants part. The national part is from Transylvania, where the Romanians in Transylvania fought for centuries to have their rights respected. And back in the 17th, 18th century, early 19th century, the Romanians in Transylvania, they could not even go to court if they were abused by the person that they were working for. They could not move from one village to another. They could not petition the government at that time. And the Romanians were fighting to have their rights respected in that area, and this is how the party started.
Right.
After 1918, when Transylvania united with Romania, there was another branch of the party that was fighting for decades to have people receiving properties back from the government. So after 1918, the two sides of the party united, and this is how the National Peasants Party was recreated, I would say, and it was pushing between the 1920, 1930, 1940, pushing the same agenda: respect for human rights, respect for the private property, and trying to keep the state out of the daily life of the people. After Romania fell under the Soviet occupation, the National Peasants Party was one of the party that was abolished by the communists.
Yeah, it was
We had
outlawed. Yeah.
thousands of people, members of the party, leaders of the party, that were jailed. The heads of the
Right.
party were thrown in jail. Many of them died in prison. After 1964, 1965, many of them that still survive the prison here, they were released, but they were placed in house arrest, or they were moved in other places of the country. But they will continue doing this underground work on promoting the Christian democratic values and the national values and the respect for fundamental rights, even under communism. Towards the end of 1980, Corneliu Coposu, which was one of the key leaders of the party, he was for 18 years in jail. He was able to assign or register the party in the International Christian Democratic Movement. And he had done that in 1986, 87, even while the party was underground. In 1989, with the fall of communism, the first party registered in Romania was the Romanian National Peasants Party, because the people behind the party were already people that had political experience. Back then, not many people knew what NATO is, what EU is, what democracy is, what respect for fundamental rights and freedom is. And it was the National Peasants Party, the leader, the key figure in the public sphere that talked about all of these values. And I'm coming back to your question, what is the relationship or the connection between the party and ECPM? Well, everything that the party stood for, for almost 150 years, 60 years in Romania, it's exactly, are exactly the values that the ECPM stands for right now in the European Union, placing at the center of this union, not the state, but the person. And the reason is because we are all created by God with inalienable rights, and it is important for the national governments to safeguard and protect the rights and freedoms of all the people, of all the individuals, of all the persons. And this is what the party stands for, even currently stands for right now in Romania. And these are some of the key goals that I have here in the parliament, to re-emphasize the importance of putting the citizen and the person first before the state.
Yeah, that's great. Then, if you care to elaborate more, what are the specific ways you and your party want to get involved with ECPM and partner with us to in any projects or in any?
First of all, it's important for the Romanian people, because I see here like two ways. One way of getting involved is in Romania, the other one at the EU level.
Definitely.
As far as Romania, for 20 years in Romania, nobody was talking anymore, or actually they were talking about Christian democratic values, but they were not actually implementing them. And we need to go back in Romania to the roots of democracy. We need to understand that it's the citizen, the one that needs to be placed first and in the center of any construction when it comes to public authority.
Yeah.
At the EU level, we have the other side. We might have democratic methods here and processes.
Yeah.
People are voting, but not many people are talking anymore about the Christian values. This was one of the reasons, for example, that I did not vote for the current commission. I remember when Ursula von der Leyen was in the Strasbourg plenary, she said that the foundation of the European Union is the Greek philosophy and the Roman law. Well, she was wrong, because if you exclude the Christian values, what would be the difference between this new European Union that she's emphasizing or she's seeing, or other people that are supporting her? What would be the difference between how the Roman Empire was, that was abusing people, that were keeping people enslaved, and currently when the rights and freedoms of the individuals and of the people are not respected? So in Romania, we need to emphasize more the Christian democratic values in general. Here, we need to emphasize more the Christian values in particular. And I have to tell you that, I already have a year of experience here.
Yes, you do.
It's not an easy job. It's not an easy job to talk about God, to talk about Jesus, to talk about the Bible, about the Word of God.
Yeah,
In this
believe that.
context where, if we look around, even the symbol over here, it has biblical meaning behind it. And if we, as even Pope John Paul II said, and many other philosophers and priests and pastors said, we need to re-evangelize Europe, and this is what we need to do. And we need to do this not only from the altar by preaching the Word of God in the church, but people who really believe in these values, they have to get out, get involved in the public life, in politics, or in NGOs, and start spreading the good news and
Right.
and going back to the basis. Because at the end of the day, even if we look historically, I said at the beginning of our interview that I've been living in the United States for almost 17 years. One thing that I've learned in the United States, that every time when U.S. is going into a crisis, doesn't matter, economical, social crisis, people over there are saying, what was the idea of the founding fathers? How have they been seeing the republic, and the relationship between the state and the people? And I think this is what we need to do also in Europe right now. Because if you look back on how the idea of a united Europe started after the Second World War, when you had countries that killed each other, that destroyed each other, that caused millions of deaths. Still, after 1950, those countries, they were able to sit around the table like we
Yeah.
are doing right now.
That's true.
And they just killed each other 5 years before. And they had the courage, the openness to sit down and talk and find ways on how to work together
To
for the good
reconcile.
of the people.
Yeah.
And this is what we need to do right now. Going back, and if you look at the life of those people that were the founding fathers of the later on called European Union, many of them were Christians. And if you read their readings and memories and stuff, memoirs, you will see that the Word of God plays an important role in their idea of bringing these countries together to create what we are calling right now peace through prosperity.
Yes.
And we need to do this as they've done it,
Yeah.
looking back at the Bible, at these core values, Christian values, and see how we can promote them in this society today.
Exactly. Well said. Well then, from your first year here in the European Parliament, what would you say is the most pressing topic or matter in European politics at the moment?
It would be many, but here's something that I've noticed, and it bothered me a lot. All these EU bureaucrats or Brussels bureaucrats are talking a lot about Commission, states, member states, union, this and that,
Yeah.
but not many of them are talking about people anymore. If anyone who's listening to us is interested, you can find transcripts of what all these commissioners and the president of the commission or president of the parliament is saying, or what people are saying in the plenary. they talk about many things, but not about the one fundamental thing, about the person.
Yeah.
Because that is what made the difference between the EU and the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was based on the state, on the government, and the government was the one deciding about everything in your life. It was the Soviet government who tried to eradicate, to wipe the national states that the Soviet Union conquered. On the other side, if you look in the West, with the EU idea, the idea started with the placing the citizen, placing the person in the center, and the role of the national state was to protect and safeguard the rights and liberties of the person. So
Right.
if we don't talk about the person anymore, if we don't place the person in the middle anymore, then what union do we have? Is this the union that the founding fathers of this union envisioned or not? So it is our mission, I would say, to go back to the foundation and bring back the vision of the founding fathers and trying to put EU on the right track.
Yeah, that's a lofty goal, and we are here to partner with you and to work with you to achieve that. Yeah.
Thank you. I have to tell you that for EU right now, EU needs ECPN more than anything else right now. And one of my, because you mentioned, you asked me about goals and stuff. One of my goals is to help all the parties that are part of ECPN right now, from member states across EU, to help them getting more and more votes. And if we can have 4 years from now more members in the parliament to be able to defend the Christian and democratic values, I think that will be a great achievement, and it will help a lot
Absolutely.
the European Union going
Absolutely.
forward. So if people are watching us right now, my advice to them would be to try to find candidates and try to support people who really believe in these values. Because if any public official is not placing you in the center of the speech and of anything that the public person or politician does, clearly they don't care about you.
Right. Yeah, we agree. In closing of our interview, I would like to hear you talk a bit more about the goals that you have in the current mandate, in the current European Parliament mandate. What are the committees specifically that you're involved in, and then what are the priorities that you're going to give your time to in these next 4 years?
One of the committees that I pushed for from the beginning was Libe Committee. And I have to tell you, there was a lot of pushback when certain people in the parliament find out that I want to be part of, as a full member of the Libe Committee. There was a lot of pushback. That was the reason why, from the beginning, I was not a full member of the Libe Committee, but a substitute member, because of certain positions that I had in the past, like supporting the natural or the traditional marriage, or stating that in Romania there are a lot of abuses and violation of human rights under the pretext of fighting corruption. But after UK left EU, there was an openness in the Libe Committee, and that's, we were able to switch, and I became a full member of Libe Committee. So the respect for, or making sure, I would say, that the rights and freedoms of the European citizens are respected, that is one of my major goals, and it starts from the belief that we are all created by God equally with these fundamental rights. So the job of the state is not to grant you rights, but to respect the rights that were already given to you by God. The second objective, or
Priority.
committees that I'm
Yeah.
part of,
Yeah.
besides Libe, I was very involved in the last year on issues related to Moldova and Georgia. It was really concerning to me, even while I was in the States, the Russian influence in the region, in the Eastern Europe, and I tried to help, and I'm still trying to help, and I'm working with these governments from Moldova and from Georgia to help them strengthening their democracy and statehood, pretty much to respond to this type of unconventional attacks from Russia that we've been seeing. Another issue that I'm focusing on is the transportation part. We still have a lot of needs, especially in Romania. Finishing freeways or highways that started 10, 15 years ago.
Many years ago.
I know.
Yeah.
Because if we really want to have a united Europe, we need to have a connected Europe.
Correct.
And right now,
Yeah.
there's no freeway. from Greece that goes all the way to, let's say Germany or so.
Yeah.
Because in Bulgaria and in Romania, you have chunks, segments of freeways that are done, but they're not connected to the others.
To each
So
other,
I think
yeah.
this is important. It's something. It's an important issue that all the commissioners will have to understand. That in order to have, we learned it from the Roman Empire. If you want to have a united empire, united union, you have to have a connected union. So
Yes.
one of my things is to emphasize this. Nevertheless, I'm paying attention to any legislation that is proposed here in the parliament that is touching base on or it might affect the Christian values. And if I find something like that, I take a stand or push back or propose amendments and stuff like that. But in order for us, because it's not only me, we are a few colleagues
We're a
here
team,
that
yeah.
we are doing this, and we could be even stronger in the next legislation if
Yep.
people that are watching us, that believe in the same values as us,
Yeah.
would support public servants that will be here, that will be coming here in the parliament and fight and defend the Christian democratic values. That were actually the foundation, the cornerstone of the European Union.
Yes, that you're absolutely right, and I want to thank you very much for your
Thank you. My
time and
pleasure.
for sitting down with me. And I ECPM feels very honored to be able to work with you and to partner with you, and we really look forward into implementing some of the ideas that you told us about today. And we definitely stand with you and with our other MEPs in promoting and protecting and actually defending the Christian values that, like you said, are at the foundation of the European Union. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you.